Hello and welcome to another edition of Puck Talk with Spider Jack. I am your host, Jack Woods. With me again for the third time, Boyd Farrish, and we're going to be talking a lot of Preds news today. Boyd, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing right. It's Monday. We're almost to draft time, almost to free agency. The starting to get into the craziness in the silly season. So looking forward to it, man. Let's go.
Time to start seeing what David Poyle's got up his sleeve this year. Boyd, we had the unfortunate circumstances that we have not been able to watch Predators hockey for the last month or so, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks, and it's just been nothing but Preds news after Preds news after Preds news, starting with, of course, the signing of Michael McCarron. He's 26 years old. He spent the majority of his career in the AHL as a fourth-line brute, kind of a big body to stand in front of the net. But some are speculating that he may be ready for the NHL. Boyd, what are your thoughts on Michael McCarron, both re-signing and the potential of him joining the Preds roster this year?
Yeah, I think it's actually not a bad re-signing. I mean, he's still relatively young. He's a former high pick. He's obviously got some talent, and it doesn't hurt to have a guy who's got some size, who's got some offensive touch, as your 14th, 15th forward, kind of lying in waiting, in case you might need them through injuries or whatnot. Because he does have a little bit more offensive skill to go, with his size. He could fill a number of holes. I don't think he's a full-time NHLer by any stretch, but that certainly doesn't mean that if he had to come in for 5, 10, 15 games to replace an injury, that he couldn't be able to positively contribute to the team.
Yeah, I agree. And sort of looking at his stats a little bit, he racked up 50 total penalty minutes. 50 total penalty minutes in the last regular season, garnering only 13 points in 27 games for the Admirals. He also spent some times as a Laval Rocket, where he also accrued 50 penalty minutes there as well. So I think that McCarron has an ability to be, like you said, that fourth line scratch. And I think that a fresher body and a bigger body than Austin Watson would certainly wreak some more havoc in front of the net.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, he's proven that he can score a little bit. He's got some pretty decent hands. So there's no reason he couldn't positively contribute in small doses. Probably just not a guy you want to be counting on for the full season, though.
Right. A guy that you play against Winnipeg or Boston or
Dallas, St. Louis,
especially Dallas. Some guy that's not afraid to throw the body around, not afraid to take a penalty. So I think that he could be an NHL guy. But I think we can both agree the biggest sigh of relief signing that occurred over the last 2 weeks was Yakov Trenton. Thank God he did not go to the KHL, right?
Exactly. It looks like, given the nature of the contract, 2 years, relatively low dollars, actually less than I was expecting. I thought he might get upwards of $1 million per. But, he got his one-way deal. So, it looks like the work with the KHL and all those promotional shoots looked like that may have just been posturing after. Yeah, everybody in Predators Nation sighing a big sigh of relief for Trenin sticking around.
Well, a guy like Trenin, who's been in the minors for all of his career, who's proven that at the very least he can hold his own on the NHL ice. He may not be doing much, but he is at least contributing somehow. The standout play in my mind was intercepting the puck at the blue line and tapping it over for Kyle Turris for that 1-0 victory over, I don't remember who, but sort of looking at his stat line, 35 points in 32 games is really hard to ignore. That's really hard to deny.
Yeah, I mean the fact is, he's a guy who's always had skill to go with his size. Has great hands. Skates better than probably he gets credit for. Certainly not a burner at his size, but he's got a really good skill set. And I think this past year, was the first time he was healthy for a full season. It was really able to kind of ply his trade in Milwaukee, especially in the top six, a lot of power play time. And you started to see he can fill the net. So, you look at probably an unsustainable shooting percentage, but he was scoring goals. I mean, he was making it to those crucial areas, those high danger areas, and showed the ability to finish. And, you try to, the best you can do is to try to project that to what it means at the NHL level. And, he's certainly got the size, he's got the hands. We saw some bits of that skill at the NHL level. I'd say more than anything, he just needs more experience and more ice time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you should say that because, we talked a little bit about McCarron's size. Well, Trenin's a boxer, right?
Yeah.
Trenin's a guy that will immediately add physicality to the team.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's a freight train for sure.
For sure. I mean, that right hook on Zdeno Chara, the punch that forced him into retirement, come on. No, but he had 5 power play goals, 6 game-winning goals, and only, like I said, 32 games. 32 games. So are there any other players that you really wish to see donning the Predators uniform next year? Because I'm personally looking forward to seeing what Rem Pitlick will do.
Yeah, well, and truth be told, that's kind of the last big signing of the existing players. With a small shout out to Colin Blackwell as well. But I think you're looking at Trenin certainly. Pitlick is going to get a long look. Tolvanen's going to get a long look. Tomasino is probably going to get a really long look. I think they will take every opportunity they can for him to win a spot. Possibly even seeing that 9-game window get utilized at the start of the season to see if he really is ready. He has nothing more to prove at the OHL level. So, you might as well see what he can do, in the major leagues. So I think we're likely to see, possibly 3 rookies in the lineup on a regular basis. 3 of the 4 of Trenin, Tolvanen, Tomasino, and Pitlick. That does make you wonder if there might be a couple more guys on the outside looking in, among whether that is Austin Watson or Calle Yarncroke or even a Nick Bonino, even though he had a very good year by what he was asked to do in a third line role. Mm-hmm. He's in his 30s, he's in the last year of his contract. Does he have the kind of trade value that could allow the Predators to, pick up a quality prospect or another couple of picks, and just to keep rounding out that youth that they need to start, really encouraging as some of the core starts to age out?
Well, what bothers me about this offseason is that we were demanded, we the fans, or maybe the fans, not we, because obviously we're Penalty Box Radio, so we are sports reporters now, so we're not fans anymore. But
totally unbiased.
Totally unbiased. But one thing that I have noticed is that what you're getting with particular players on the Predators roster. You knew what you were getting with Craig Smith. You knew what you were getting with Calle Yarncroke. You knew what you were getting with, XYZ player, right? And David Poile has made it clear that he wanted to re-sign Craig Smith and he wanted to re-sign Mikael Glenlund, but didn't. So I'm still confused as to why Poile isn't trying to reshape the roster to basically allow 2 top NHL lines and then 2 top AHL lines and letting them figure it out. So with guys like Anthony Richard and Colin Blackwell, prospects that have had time in the NHL and have had time to sort of prove, oh, hello, what's going on?
Oh, my bad.
Yes, I'm in an interview.
My bad.
You're good. So with
College life, man.
so with prospects like Richard and like Blackwell, who find themselves in a precarious situation where they have had NHL time, what do you foresee for their future, at least with the Predators?
I mean, I think, if nothing else, it makes sense to ensure there's plenty of competition in camp. These are low-cost guys. You're not going to get tied to them long-term. So, if you have to make a hard choice to cut someone loose or send someone down, you're not really hampering the overall cap structure or the overall roster. I would tend to agree with you that when you have a group of guys towards the bottom end of the roster that what they offer and you kind of know what their ceiling is, when you have a group of other players that are up and coming that possibly have a higher ceiling, it sort of makes sense to take a chance and see if you can extract that higher ceiling out of those spots in the lineup. The inherent risk obviously being, what if they don't reach it? But, at that point, what you're really counting on, and I think what we're looking at for the Nashville Predators this year is they're really counting on their top of the roster, Forsberg, Arvidsson, Johansson, Duchesne, Josi, Ellis, and Ekholm, to pull that team forward. Mm-hmm. And the injection of youth is there to learn and grow and hopefully contribute. But, what you're really looking at if you're the Predators is you need your top guys to play like it. Mm-hmm. You need Philip Forsberg scoring 40 goals. You need Matt Duchesne scoring 30 goals. You need Josi and Ellis. Well, honestly, they couldn't have done anything more than they did last season, being the best defensive pair on the planet. Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to that in a second. Don't worry.
But that's really what you're looking at from a roster construction perspective is, trying to get that right mix of skill sets, bring that youth in and see if they can, make that next level leap. And there is the opportunity that, one of these guys or multiple of these guys coming up might cost somebody else a roster spot.
Well, 2 players or 3 players that I'm looking at Austin Watson, I'm looking at Nick Bonino, and I'm looking at Kalle Järnkrok. Mm-hmm. I think Colton Sissons and Rocco Grimaldi are the only 2 players that have legitimately earned a bottom 6 role. Colton Sissons is phenomenal in the defensive zone, at least when he's given solid line mates. Mm-hmm. And of course, Rocco Grimaldi is the reincarnation of Victor Arvidsson. But you sort of add to your point, Philip Forsberg and Victor Arvidsson, they're not 4th-line guys anymore. They're not guys seeing 9-10 minutes of ice time. They're not guys that are playing underneath Mike Fisher and James Neal anymore. No, they are the new Mike Fisher and James Neal, and they need to produce and play like it. So, but I
mean, truthfully, Philip Forsberg is the most talented player. I mean, outside of that brief glimpse of actually, ironically, Peter Forsberg. Philip Forsberg is the most talented player the Predators have probably ever had. And he should be pushing the Predators scoring records on an annual basis.
Yep.
No doubt about it. And so that's really what they have to be looking for is how do they extract that top level of talent and that top level of production out of that lineup. And, what you're hoping to do is to be able to fill in those other spots with that youth, with that talent that can, produce enough to draw some of the attention away. Because you can't have a situation where go back a couple of years in the Winnipeg series, or especially the series against Dallas, where basically Dallas took out the Jofa line and nobody else could do anything.
Well, and that also reflects on players like Kyle Turris and Matt Duchesne and players that are still on the roster who have had success elsewhere, but for some reason can't find success here. But
absolutely.
But two players who have blown it out of the water, Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis. I am not surprised in the slightest that Roman Josi won the Norris Trophy. I am surprised that he did not slice it in half and give it to Ryan Ellis, because the dynamic between those two was unmatchable. You talk about the best example is the game against the Lightning back in November when the Lightning had the all-black jerseys, right? Forward lines didn't show up. It was basically Ellis and Josi running the show, taking the Lightning to the cleaners the entire game. Finally, Ellis finishes off in overtime in a fitting fashion. Josi, of course, ties the game with 5 minutes left. I mean, these guys are the core. These guys are the players that the Predators need right now. But what do you think was especially important about Ellis and Yosi's game that pushed Josi into Norris winning, into the Norris Trophy winning category?
I think, first and foremost, their skill sets are perfectly complementary. So Roman Josi is one of the best puck handlers and skaters on the planet at any position, not just from the blue line, and has a great creative skill getting to the net and scoring in those high danger areas. Ryan Ellis, not as great of a skater, not as great of a puck handler, not to say that he's poor by any stretch, but he is an excellent passer, has tremendous vision. So where Josi collects the puck in the defensive zone and his first look is to skate it out, Ryan Ellis is looking up, trying to find that guy cutting down the ice and hitting that long seam pass, or what we saw a number of years ago that worked so well was just that flop over the top pass that just allowed someone like Arvidsson to just be faster than everybody else and go chase it down. And how many breakaways did that create? And then, Ryan Ellis being very, very solid and steady, positionally on defense allows Josi to roam and allows him to go curl up, go drive it all the way down below the baseline and, really use that freedom. And then, the other element of Ryan Ellis is, he has got a cannon of a shot for someone who's not very big. He can absolutely let it rip. So just being able to combine their skill sets, and I think that's a big part of what the Predators need to evaluate, and this would be heavily on Coach Hines, is how to fit those lines and those pairings together to maximize the skill sets of the various players. And, the other example of that we saw during Arizona, the series with Arizona, was the reuniting Jofa. And the mix of skill sets between players, the speed and shot taking of Arvidsson, the size and playmaking skill of Ryan Johansson, and just the overall game of Philip Forsberg, they blend so well. They all work off of each other. And throughout the rest of the lineup, we just haven't seen that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of the roster makeover, kind of however that takes shape exactly, is getting these players into the right spots where they have the right complementary skill sets to allow them to maximize what they do best.
Yeah, without a doubt. And one guy that fits the mold but doesn't fit the mold is Craig Smith. Unfortunately, he's not going to be that 40-goal scorer. He's not going to be that 30-goal scorer, but he will consistently get you 20 goals, and he can fit in on pretty much any line that you put him on. But unfortunately, the Predators have just run out of room for players like that. And as much as it pains me to say it, I think Craig Smith would be a fantastic fit in St. Louis. What do you think?
He would definitely fit well in St. Louis. I actually was thinking about this last year around the trade deadline. I thought he'd be a great fit with the Islanders.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Back with Trotz.
Perfect. Perfect kind of player to fit with that system. High speed, lots of pressure, shots on the net. I think he'd work great there. I think he'd work well in Montreal with the team that they're building, another team that likes to play fast. There's got to be 25 teams that could use a player like Craig Smith.
Yeah.
The problem for Nashville is, and I apply this to not just Craig Smith, but to really any potential free agent signing, including the players that were existing. Given the cap space restrictions, the talent that's coming up, what you've got looming with Seattle, with what are we going to do with Matthias Ekholm? I'd be wary of any free agent signing that goes longer than 2 years, just because there's so much uncertainty with what's going to take place between the cap and expansion, and some of the existing contracts. So when you look at a player like Craig Smith, who's now in his 30s, he's probably going to want 4 years or more. And, even if you got kind of a hometown discount, I just don't think that's a contract the Predators can sign right now. And, with each year, a player getting into his 30s becomes less and less tradable. And, if he starts to lose a step, does he start to lose some of his effectiveness? Because that's what makes him in part so productive, is his speed through the middle of the ice. And so as much as it's, hard to see a player like that go, who has given everything for Nashville for years on end and has been one of the most consistently productive players, I just think they're going to reach a point with him. They reached it with Michael Granlund as well, that it's just not a contract you can sign, and there's players that know they can probably get more elsewhere.
Well, and if I were Craig Smith, go get that payday, dude. Go get another $4 million for 4 years, and I really hate to watch a player like him go, especially since he's been the third most scoring forward since 2012. But boy, that brings me to a great point. Time to get into a new thing at Puck Talk. Never tried it before. We're going to do a little mailbag.
Love it. Let's do it.
So, Boyd, this one is from Tom Coughlin at Tom Coughlin. Tom is spelled with an H. Who is your dark horse Preds free agent signing? Boyd, please take it away.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's going to be anybody on the forward side, because
Interesting.
The Preds have enough either top end forwards or guys that are coming in that need to play those top end roles, that unless you're clearing space to go get Taylor Hall, or I guess maybe Mike Hoffman, you're probably not going that route. And that's another big money contract that I don't know if they can really afford to sign.
I was about to say, are you going to sign Alexei Emelin for a AHL contract too while you're at it?
Awesome. Let's do it. You can never not sign Alexei Emelin. Come on now.
Throw him a PK and he'll be fine.
But looking at it on the defensive side, a name that gets brought up a lot is Dylan DeMello. And I actually, as much as I would think he'd be a great fit in Nashville, he was probably Winnipeg's best defenseman outside of Josh Morrissey. So I think Winnipeg would be absolutely silly to let him walk. Where I think a kind of similarly aged, similar cost player that the Predators might have a chance at would be from the LA Kings, Ben Hutton, who statistically had a really strong year on a objectively pretty bad Kings team.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And his all of his Corsi expected goal numbers were in the mid 50s. He made, I think, $1.5 million last season. So if you assume that, him being age 27, the Kings are probably looking to go a little bit younger. If you can give him a little bit of a raise on a 1 to 2 year contract, there's a real opportunity he could come in and be a strong contributor on probably the third pair, flex up to the second pair as needed. And if he can match those types of possession numbers, and expected goal metrics and kind of scoring metrics, I mean, that could be a significant boost to the back end of the defensive lineup without costing a bunch of money.
Yeah. I'm a wishful thinker. I like to think, I'm an optimist, and I also love NHL 20. So I'm going to throw Taylor Hall out there. Taylor Hall, you're going to be a Nashville Predator, I swear.
Hey, if you have a chance to go get elite talent, you go get elite talent, and you figure
Go get
everything else
elite
after it.
talent. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine Taylor Hall, Duchesne, and a Tolvanen? I mean, even if it's an all lefty shot line, that's still pretty lethal. And if
Absolutely.
Ellie Tolvanen is your guy on a line, that's a damn good line. So
Yeah, when he's your sixth best forward and the five in front of him are all, very good to elite talents, yeah, you're okay.
you're in great shape. And this question is from Paul Peterson at SP_underscore Peterson6. Expectations for the new coaching staff. Finally whittled out the remnants of Laviolette's coaching, so it's Heinz's full reign. Go at it.
So I, kind of looking at the way the coaching staff has taken shape, and certainly listening to some of the comments that new assistant coach Dan Heinold made during his kind of opening meeting with the media. What it really looks to me is like this: is Heinz is the overall strategist, and especially the defensive strategist. Over the course of his coaching career, he's generally had a positive impact on his teams defensively, but really just not much impact offensively. So I think he's obviously talked a lot about the mental part of the game. So I think he's kind of motivator, and then really focusing on the defensive side. When you look at Dan Lambert, he is pure and simple an offensive coach. And I think what you have to be looking for Coach Lambert to do this year is to put his full imprint on the offense and just let him do his thing. What his style and his system is, let him put those forward lines together and see where they can match up those skill sets. Try to draw anything out of the power play. Certainly couldn't get any worse. And even with him being on the staff last year, I think what you saw glimpses of improved play, getting to the right areas, puck and player movement, and that would go as long as things were working. But as soon as things got tough, they ran right back to lobby ball, and those styles just didn't work. And so I think assuming Heinz is going to sort of take his hands off of the offense and let Coach Lambert kind of do his thing, it'll be very intriguing to see what he can do with some of those talents and kind of shaping them the way that he sees they should be run. And then for Coach Heinold, based on his comments, he really sounds to me like the players coach.
Yeah.
That he's the guy, that he's the sounding board, relates to everybody, is going to kind of help the team gel a little bit better. When Heinz is kind of the, bad cop motivator, driving and pushing, Heinold's probably the guy to come in behind and be a little bit positive and say, here's what we need to do. And then, him being a former player on the defensive side, he'll probably spend time with the defenseman, probably spend time on the penalty kill. So I think, kind of the way those fit together. But I think kind of looking the staff extended, I think what will be interesting to see is how kind of the reshaped development team works. So Rob Scuderi, who did spend a little bit of time on the bench in the playoffs, and I think towards the end of the season as well. But also Sebastian Bordelot, kind of focused on the offensive side. Now that they've sort of changed out, do we start to see a little bit of a different approach taken with growing and developing some of these players that is a little bit different than the age-old mentality of you're going to be in Milwaukee until literally you can't be there anymore, and then we're going to ship you up to Nashville. Which the road to Nashville going through Milwaukee, not a bad thing. It's produced some very, very good players. But I think there's also been a long-term kind of hesitation to bring some of, especially the younger talented forwards, and kind of put them in a place to see if they can succeed. And it even based off some of the offseason comments sounds like that might even be changing, especially with someone like a Tomasino, who appears to be such that level of talent that you just have to get him there and see what he can do.
Well, I'm all for reshaping talent. I'm all for redirecting where players are supposed to use the ice I'm all for development, right? I'm all for development. But
Yep.
if he's already developed, if he's spent even 2 years in Milwaukee and he's throwing 35 points in 32 games, he's ready.
Yep.
You don't need to waste time. You don't need to continually try to bring in big free agent names because you want to build the all-star team. No, if you develop talent, use it. Don't just drop it off. And I completely agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, and and honestly, that's where I make some of the commentary about the guys who are at the bottom of the roster. And, you kind of know what you have, but if you have someone that you think could be more, you have to give them a chance to go out and prove it.
Calle Yarncroke would be a great fit in a Los Angeles and a New Jersey, on a Florida Panthers team. Like, it's not that they're not good players. They're just not needed. We have the Predators have way too many middle six forwards. They need some diversity.
And I think, and I just don't think they can run Calle Yarncroke out in a top six role again.
Without a doubt.
He's proven that, he can get you 15 goals, but with the level of talent the Predators have, it's not enough.
That's not what the Predators need. And even having a mediocre player in place for an injury, I would still rather just keep pushing the best to the top and then keep bringing in young players. But any expectations that I have for the new staff, it's this. If you're going to infuse youth into the roster, into the lineup, that is a terrific opportunity for this new coaching staff to mold the team how they really want it.
Absolutely.
When you bring in a 27-year-old center from Ottawa and Arizona who's already been in the NHL, who's already established themselves in the NHL, it's kind of hard to teach that player new things. If you have youth in the roster at an impressionable age, then you might actually be able to implement your system. So, Paul Peterson, my expectations are very high because they have such a tremendous opportunity to shape the roster how they want to. Now, Boyd,
all right.
Boyd, it sounds like I've run through all the questions that I could find. Did you happen to find any more questions?
Oh yeah. So I've got one for you. I know about one of your favorite players.
Okay, bring it on.
Plenty of rumors around former Predator great James Neal.
Yes.
And this one coming from Taylor Bryant at Taylor B and a bunch of numbers. If James Neal ends up being bought out, which possibility, I don't know if he'll be bought out maybe as much as traded, but what do you think? Does he make his way back to Nashville?
If he's willing to take less than $1 million, come on back, James. Come on back. We'd love to have you. No, I don't think there's a good chance of him returning right now. John Jensen said it best when he said that nostalgia will kill the Predators. So it's not that James Neal won't find his way back to Nashville. It's when and what amount of money he's going to take. I think James Neal is still too expensive right now to bring back. But if he wants to come back to Nashville his last season and take a 1 year, $1 million contract, then by all means, come on back. But I don't think James Neal has a place on the roster right now. I would tend to agree. I love the guy. He's just not the right fit right now. He'll be the next Scott Hartnell. All right.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of falls into exactly what you're saying, and sort of to what I was referencing earlier, that I'm wary of anything longer than 2 years from someone outside the organization.
Right.
Obviously, barring a Taylor Hall type of thing, but if for the sake of argument, James Neal gets bought out, to your point, he's willing to come here for dirt cheap because he's already getting paid, on a 1-by-1 Poyle special, and he's a more talented version of some of the other veterans that are there below kind of that top 6. And, he can be, kind of a guard against some of the young guys, being maybe not quite ready or not quite as ready as we hope they are. That's fine. I'd be happy to see it, because his level of capability on the open market will cost way more, and would probably end up being a contract that the Predators would ultimately regret. So, if there was a scenario that, he did get released and could come to the Predators on the cheap, sure,
well,
I'd be open to it.
I would even be open to a 2-year contract. I'd be open to a 2-year, $2.5 million, foster in Yakov Trenton and Michael McCarron and really show them what the NHL's about, and then say, all right, thank you. You've played your part, and we'll remember you in the history books.
Exactly. All right, and then I got one more for you.
Okay.
From the aforementioned John Jensen.
Of course.
And for those that didn't see, that aren't in Jack's Twitter world, Jack recently was the officiant for John Jensen's wedding. So
yes, thank you. More applause, please.
So John asks, does Jack have a future officiating weddings, or will he be sticking with the lucrative world of hockey podcasting?
Well, you see, John, the problem is this doesn't pay at all. And being a wedding officiant, at the very least, I can afford one meal. So assuming that this whole hockey podcasting thing doesn't take off, I might have to officiate your next wedding and possibly the wedding after that too.
Hey man, 3 meals, it's living large.
3 meals in the course of 20 years. I'd call that a success. No, I was more than happy to officiate John's wedding. Stephanie and John, of course, have waited a very long time to get married, and I'm very happy that they finally tied the knot, and I was very blessed to be a part of the ceremony. It was a beautiful Wisconsin weekend, and I hate that I had schoolwork that needed attending to, so I couldn't attend the reception. But no, once again, John, Stephanie, congratulations, and hopefully I'll be invited to the, I don't know if you guys are going to have a 10-year anniversary party, but it'd be nice to get another free meal.
And name the baby Jack.
Yeah. Well, you have to, because I basically, I was, I'm the direct pipeline. Like, I got permission from God himself to marry you. So I don't know how you not name your first kid after me.
It's amazing how close God and the internet come in those situations.
Are you of 18 years old? Are you not a felon? And have you been to church? Those are the 3 qualifications to become an ordained minister.
And do you have a pulse?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's optional.
Boyd, we have officially run out of time, and Zoom is trying to kick me off. So, Boyd, once again, thank you so much for coming on. A lot of
course, anytime.
Stuff.
Anytime, man.
Folks, we'll be back, hopefully with Boyd once again. Maybe it'll just be me and Boyd from now on. But, folks, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to check out all of Penalty Box Radio's content at penaltyboxradio.com. Be sure to follow Boyd on Twitter at @BBoyd_1212. If you see the 4-head of security and just a really just close-up face, you found him. And my Twitter account is @Jack_Woods15. Thank you so much for tuning in for Puck Talk, and we'll see you next.
Thanks, Jack.